This is episode 4 of Youthful Perspectives. I'm your host, Mason Beardbaum. My guest today is former co-owner of Midsota Manufacturing and the current owner of Millwood Metalworks, Tim Burg. During our conversation, Tim and I discussed his humble and informative upbringing on a central Minnesota dairy farm, his 5-year transformation from sweeping a shop floor to becoming a shop foreman, the valuable role robotics play within the manufacturing world, Hispanic work ethic, kindness, and generosity, and the lessons Americans can learn from them, and what truly matters when you've become successful within your field of business. Throughout our discussion, I was struck by the quiet confidence and humble manner Tim carries himself as a person. His genuine pride when discussing both his successful business ventures and the employees who helped achieve them was something I admired before, during, and after our conversation. He truly demonstrates what vision, work ethic, and empathy can produce when all three are harnessed together. I hope you come away with a similar feeling of admiration. And now, Tim Burg. All right, well, thank you, Tim, for joining me today. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. We'll start with the first question here. What was it like growing up on a small dairy farm in central Minnesota?
Growing up on the farm, we learned a lot of just values, the hard work, things like that, family, the importance of family and sticking together, and then the work side of it. You know, as a young kid on the farm, we did a lot of work out there. So,
was there a certain age when you started, responsibilities were given towards you, and you got to get up bright and early, and you got to start working like everyone else? You remember what age that was for you when you?
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I started actually physically milking cows. And I remember my mom warning me because my dad asked if I wanted to start milking cows, and I did. And my mom said, "Are you sure?" Because she knew from that point forward, it was 4:30 in the morning, and then usually it was 8, 9 o'clock at night when he got back in the house. So it was a long day.
Yeah, absolutely. And no days off, whether it's negative 30 degrees outside or 90 degrees, you're out there milking them no matter what. Yeah. So milking was one of the required chores for you, I'm assuming. Was there any other ones that were required or expected of the kids around the farm to do?
Oh, yeah. There was, that was just one of the many things. We took care of all the cattle and then all the land. We were young. We were working in the fields and doing things, and it was, that was just part of life. It wasn't even a chore, really. It was just our life at the time. We just did what we did. You didn't know any different. We worked till early morning until late at night, and we never looked at it different. And honestly, is probably one of the best things in the world that had happened to me. You know, now looking back, it gave me great work ethic.
Absolutely. I'm sure that had been very formative, and especially when you are brought up in that environment and you see that it's not something like unusual to get up that early and start working that hard. It's just something that is expected of you. And I'm assuming your parents led by example. Were you the oldest of your siblings, or did you have older siblings?
No, I was right in the middle. I had one older sister and 2 older brothers, and then I had a younger brother and a younger sister.
Okay. Awesome. I can relate to that, being in the middle as well myself.
Yep. Was
there any chores that you enjoyed the most, or is there any that was kind of dreaded when someone was required to do that chore? Any that come to mind to you?
As I was getting older, older being in high school, and the whole milking and the dairy side of it, I didn't enjoy that. That part was probably the hardest, early mornings, and after a while it just kind of wore you down. That was the one I didn't like the most. The rest was, feeding the cattle and doing the field work. That was fun. I always enjoyed that stuff.
So when you talk about fields, I'm assuming you had crops on the farm as well that you guys had to take care of or, nurture throughout the season. Which crops did you guys happen to grow on your farm?
Yeah, we always had corn, soybeans, and oats. We always had oats this time of year. We would always harvest the oats and then bale the straw. So we did a lot of baling, a lot of small square bales we used to handle. I know every summer we baled straw. We did always 7,000 to 8,000 bales, and we would do that as young kids. We were out there stacking those, so it was a lot of work.
Yeah, those don't get light at all. So I've heard. I haven't had I don't know if pleasure is the right word, but I haven't had the experience of baling hay or anything like that. I've picked a field in my day, but I just remember I always tell people that's the hardest full body work I've ever endured. And that was a one-time experience, let alone, people do that year after year after year. So, yeah, those takes a work ethic to say the least and determination. Yep. How would you describe your parents growing up?
My parents were good, good parents. We didn't have it easy, very disciplined, very, structured, and you had to get your stuff done. If you didn't, you were in trouble, and you were held to that level. My mom was super nice lady, hardworking. Actually, my mom would milk cows with us every morning and every night, and she also worked a full-time job besides that.
Wow.
So she was just a very caring individual, and my dad was too, but more of the stickler. He made sure you stayed in line. That's how kind of our family dynamic worked. He
was the quality control for the jobs that you guys were doing.
Yeah, he was quality control, I guess.
Was there certain lessons? You talked about work ethic as one. Mm-hmm. Was there any other lessons that come to mind, whether it was, you talked about the importance of family or anything else that you could think of?
Yeah, it's just the whole side of it. There is, when you look at how we were raised, it was with the farm, there was, you had the hard work, but you had knowledge. You had to learn. You knew how to do crops and what the crop input was, and even the quality side of it. Running a big dairy, it was very grade A. We were always grade A farmers, so the quality of how to handle the milk products and things like that, and then how to raise the cattle and grow the cattle and how that worked. It was a lot of learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. Some people might have the perception that, you just wake up and milk cows and then you go about your day. It's a lot more than just that, certainly.
Yeah, there's a science to all of it.
Absolutely. So overall, you would say there's a lot of life lessons that you learned on the farm, work ethic talked about, just learning. Was there any specific moments that you can remember on the farm that it really made a profound impact on you that you took away later on in life or seemed to come back to later in life?
Not really. It all just kind of flows together.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought as a kid, I never really enjoyed it. You just kind of, working hard, and mom and dad made you do that and everything. It's at the time, it was stressful or you didn't like it as much. Now looking back, it was so valuable what it taught us.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm very fortunate that I grew up like that.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's transitioning now. You said you started milking cows when you were 12. When high school came around, I'm assuming you helped out a little bit here, but you're also, were occupied with school. Mm-hmm. Now, am I correct in saying you didn't participate in sports at all when you were in high school? You just didn't have the time for that? That's correct?
Yeah. I often wanted to. And actually, my two coaches called my parents, and one was football and one was track. Both of them called, and just in our Phi Ed class, I was very fast runner, and they both called and they talked to my dad, and it wasn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I look back, I kind of wish I'd have had that opportunity. I think we would have did pretty well, but. No, there was no time. It was, nope, he needs to be at home and working on the farm, which, you passed up those opportunities probably, but at that time, that's kind of the way it was.
Yeah, and you were probably one of many kids in Paynesville High School and just those surrounding schools that was just how it worked, and that's kind of tough luck. If you want to.
Exactly. There was a lot of that. That's just how the farm, back then, that's how it was. It just... We were the hired hands on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
So, staying after school or after sports, it just didn't work. Didn't work in the schedule, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. But you were able to go to high school, the actual school part during that time. So how would you describe yourself as a student when you attended high school?
Good. I did just fine in school. A lot of times I came across I wasn't overly eager some days to be there. I did okay in the classes. Could have did a lot better if I focused more on it. There were many times on a beautiful spring day, I'd be looking out the window. I remember one time a teacher even said to me, "Mr. Burg, what's going on out there?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I wish I was outside right now." But I mean, I'd pull the be honor roll type of thing. But it wasn't my focus. I mean, I very seldom did I bring homework home. I just didn't have time. That was my excuse at the time anyway. I didn't have time to do the homework. So really, I did everything I could in school, and I didn't really ever take anything home with me.
So you probably thought your time could be utilized elsewhere. I
Yeah.
mean, not saying school's not important, but
No.
at the time you probably thought you would rather spend your time doing other things, whether it's on the farm or, jobs, other stuff like that.
Yeah, our mom pushed us pretty hard, it's in school to make sure we did everything we needed to in school. But as a young man in school, it was, I did what I had to get by, to be honest.
There you go. Was there any classes that you particularly had an interest in or you enjoyed more compared to others?
Oh, yeah. Always science. I always enjoyed science in my younger grades. And then as high school, math. I've always enjoyed math. That was enjoyable to me.
Yeah. Was there a specific teacher that had a profound impact on you that you could look back on, whether it was science teacher, math teacher, maybe one of the shop teachers that you could have taught you a thing or two that you didn't know beforehand or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there were quite a handful of teachers, elementary teachers that were really good that just taught us a lot. High school, there was, I don't know. I mean, there was an ag teacher, Bill Ryan, just a neat guy. Not that he taught us a lot, probably more as just an adult individual, military guy. He was always really fun to talk to. Got me into, even back then, FFA. So that was always later in the evenings. We'd have some of those meetings and we'd go to that. And that was kind of fun. He was in charge of that. So I enjoyed that.
It seems like similar to a teacher we had at Albany with Mr. Litchie, sort of. People always enjoyed his classes, but also having the conversations that he provided with students, and he also helped run FFA. So maybe those FFA advisors got something going for him.
Right, yeah.
So was it 16 you said was the time you got your first job outside of the farm?
Yep.
And that was at Roto Chopper, correct?
Yep.
And that's
back then it was called Peltz Manufacturing. Fred and Barb Peltz owned it. I was 16 years old. Got hired in sweeping floors. That's what I did when I worked in the summer, just cleaning, and then even during the school year. So I would actually get out of school at I think it was like 1:20 in the afternoon. I'd get out on work release, and once I could drive, and went to Roto Chopper and worked, and it made for a full day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back then you'd get up at 4:30 and do our chores and go to school and get out at 1:20, go to work, come back to the farm, milk cows, and do your thing. And usually it was 9:00 at night, so it was
going to bed by
then. It was a long day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Probably the only thing you wanted to do was go to bed by that time.
Right.
So you mentioned Peltz. Is this Fred Peltz, correct?
Yep.
I've heard that he seemed to have a profound impact on you at a young age. You just want to elaborate on who he was as a man and what he taught you?
Yeah. Great guy. Fred and Barb both. I always called him my second dad. He just really took me under his wing. As a young man, I just started working there. And just he was so knowledgeable. He wasn't, he'd always tell me he didn't do very well in school, but boy, when it came to building or manufacturing stuff, the guy was just extremely brilliant. But yeah, he believed in me. He pushed me out of my comfort zone many times as I grew with him. I went from sweeping floors to being a welder on the floor, and then many traveling. I'd travel for Peltz and Roto Chopper once it turned to Roto Chopper, but I'd travel all over the country. And I remember those first trips, being a Stearns County farm kid. I never flew. Heck, I never traveled out of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And those first couple times I went to, I remember Phoenix, Arizona. And I remember flying to Phoenix, Arizona, and I had to have a sales guy meet me at the airport to get my rental cars for me. And I remember the first time going, Fred's like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll figure it out." And tell you what, it was an experience. We coming out of that airport, 5-6 lanes of traffic going one way, and I got so lost. I mean, I've never been part of that, but it made me grow, and that's how he did. He just, same with driving semi. He would, first couple times I drove and ended up driving out east and driving big rig. I mean, got my Class A and all that stuff to do demos and things. And Fred just believed in you. That's who he was. He did that with many people. He was such a good, strong person, and what a great community leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So he seemed to be more of an emphasis on just the work experience. You know, he said he wasn't the best in school, but he was very brilliant outside of school. And I think there's a lot of people nowadays, especially in these small town areas, that they might not be getting a honor roll, but tell you what, you put them in a shop or you put them on farm, they are as smart as anyone else around town when it comes to that sort of stuff. And you need people like that.
And he just did that. He just believed in that. And I mean, I even think back, I was going to go to college, and I never did go to college, but I was going to go to college at Wilmer Tech for welding back then. And I remember him telling me, he goes, "You sure you want to go?" And this was my senior year, and I'm like, "Yeah, I think I need to, And he told me, he goes, "I tell you what," he goes, "you stay here, and I think I can teach you everything you need to know." And it probably was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my career, was not saying you shouldn't go to college. You should go to college. I believe in that. My kids go. I make sure they all go to college.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it really kicked my career off.
Yeah.
Staying there, working with him, traveling, doing all that stuff. I think I was 21 or 22 when I became shop foreman at Rotachopper. So those work experiences and what he did for me was huge.
Yeah, and that was you're kind of alluding to my next question here, is at the age of 21, you became a shop foreman, and just interesting to think on what that experience had been like for you. I mean, you start off sweeping the floors. 5 years later, you're running the shop. I mean, that had been tough, having to be the boss of people that were older than you.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that there were difficulties that arose from that. Was there any in particular that you found, more hard to figure out than others, or is there you kind of knew what you were expecting and it got easier as time went on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, being that shop foreman in that position was hard as a young person, but relied on a lot of the older people that have been there longer to work with them and truly work as a team. And that goes for everything. You just really work together as a team. You asked about hard times and how that was. There were times in there that, I remember certain people that I had to let go. And one particular man, and over the years, he taught me a lot. But over the years, he was probably 60, and I ended up letting him go. And I was a young man, 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there, when I let him go. But he was stealing from our company, and I ended up letting him go for that. And that was probably one of the harder days at that company.
Absolutely. I mean, not only are you letting a fellow employee, but someone that was almost a mentor to you in the things they taught. But that had been very formative for you at that young age on how to make, might not be the easy decision, but it's the right decision.
Yeah, it was morals, right? And he was taking from all of us at that point. He was stealing equipment, and I caught him doing it, and there wasn't a choice. It wasn't even a choice that day. I knew he had to be let go, and I just took care of that. But it was hard because that man taught me a lot of stuff as I was younger, and it was hard. But that wasn't something that our company would tolerate, and I for sure personally was not going to tolerate.
Mm-hmm. And you got to put the company above your personal relationship at that point.
Yep, that was very, very hard. Absolutely.
I feel like you wouldn't maybe necessarily even be doing your job if you would turn a blind eye to something like that. You're picking favors. I mean, you got to treat him just like you treat the newest guy you hired, especially when you're in that leadership position like that.
Yep, absolutely. It wasn't a decision.
So you talked the lessons of teamwork and then just morals and all of that, knowing right from wrong. Was there anything else that you learned, whether it be leadership or business, while you were working at Roto Shopper?
Oh, absolutely. Everything. I mean, back, being foreman, there was for many, many years, I would order all the steel from the company. So you did some purchasing, you did just a variety of jobs. Back then, I mean, there was maybe, at that point, maybe we had 20 some employees. So, I mean, you wore many, many hats. Mm-hmm. You just had to do, but what we learned, I mean, just purchasing and buying, doing all the buying and understanding, cash flows and things like that and what it took to operate that company. And that was a cool part about back at Fred and Barb owning that company. They shared a lot of things with us. Mm-hmm. We knew the heartbeat of the company. We knew what was going on. They were very open with us. And growing that company, there were a lot of hard times. There wasn't a ton of cash flow. There wasn't a lot of things. So you worked and looked for good deals, and you looked at working with the materials and making sure they got the best yield you could out of a lot of the material to save the company money. And it was a really close-knit team. So we worked together extremely well. So I don't know, there's so much in there that I learned, and the values and what we were able to do. It was, I mean, I can't even put my finger on all of it. It was just a lot. And then learning all the equipment. Back then I went to high school. It wasn't like you had a lot of computers and stuff. Mm-hmm. So we started, and we had, flame tables, plasma tables. You had to learn the controls. And then later we got into robotics, and I had one robot. I mean, it was we bought a used robot. It was my first experience with robots. That was an old robot that was in an Oldsmobile plant. That tells you how old it is. Mm-hmm. It was an old Oldsmobile robot, Fanuc robot. And we got that programmed and learned some of the stuff there. It was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And again, alluding to my next question, robotics seemed to be a big part in your professional career as you got older and as technology progressed over time. By the time you got involved with these robots, do you remember what year it was roughly, or what time period this was?
Oh, the first experience was Roto Chopper. So I think I was trying to remember, had to be when I was probably 25, somewhere around age 25, 26, somewhere in there. Late 90s. Okay. Truly. We got into the little bit of automation there, and then further career after I left Roto Chopper, working for Central McGowan I worked for Central McGowan in St. Cloud for 4.5 years, and that's where I really got my automation robotic stuff going.
Absolutely. And was there a certain point that you remember looking back when you're like, there's a lot of potential in these? There's a lot of ways where you can make a shop run more effectively. Was there a certain point when you realized the untapped potential that they possessed?
Yeah, I mean, the big part there, doing the Central McGowan and the automation side, selling, actually you'd sell robots and program robots and do some of that stuff. So I really learned a lot about them in that part of my life. But then more so when I bought my first company personally, Midsota, was where I really found the value in the time savings and the quality of the product, and then the high volume. When you had high volume, smaller parts, that's where the robots really paid off.
Yeah, so you would say that the high volume is where they not necessarily could replace a worker, but not necessarily in like the sense of a worker couldn't do this job. It's just the pace at which they can do this job is just something a human couldn't sustain.
Right. 100%. I know at first when I started doing robotics, a lot of people would ask that actually. When I worked for McGowan and I was selling robots, a lot of the employees, when you went into somebody somewhere and sold a robot, they were worried about losing their job. And, you had to teach them. It's like, don't be that person. Be the one that wants to learn this stuff and be on the top edge of this. And it was a big part of not having enough labor to do what we were doing. And then also there were so many spots where people would have to sit there and weld the same part over and over, and physically it just got draining.
Yeah.
So that's really where the automation and the robots took over that part and helped grow a lot of businesses, because you could do a little higher volume and then the high quality of the part. I mean, that was a big change for everybody to see. Not every part, I mean, when you run it off a robot, you see every part looks identical, and it's pretty neat. So I don't ever believe that in my industry, as far as manufacturing goes, I don't know that robots have ever really taken anybody's position. I believe they get used when you can't find the right amount of labor or the right labor to do some of those positions.
Yeah, because they might the robot might be welding a certain part, but then you're gonna need someone to look over the robot when it's working. You need someone to program the robot. If it happens to break down, you need someone to fix the robot. So, though it might be taking a job at face value, there's still 3 more jobs that are created.
Exactly. And a lot of that's a higher level. We always would take a welder or anybody on the floor to give them the option to program and do those things and train people up to do that. So a lot of times those positions would actually improve or give somebody a higher valued job. I shouldn't, skill set, maybe a better way to put it. Allow them to be trained and bring them up on a higher level of a skill set.
And you talked about too with the quality on robots aren't going to complain when the shop's warm, and they don't have bad days and they don't have good days. They just have what they're programmed to do. Whereas with a human, you're going to have good days and bad days. And I know Isaac likes to complain when the shop is warm some days too. So I could see why there's the many pros to getting robots in the shop.
Yeah, it is. And the other side of it, I always believed when I was as I was doing business, I liked adding robots because I could shut them off. My biggest thing is I own companies. I never wanted to be the guy that hired a bunch of people and then laid them off. Say every 6 months or a year, you'd see a lot of companies doing that. And with the robots, I was able to flatten the work schedule, basically. If it was a little slower, if you needed to shut a machine off like that, it wasn't a big deal. But when I had an employee and their livelihood and their families relied on what we were producing and what we were doing, that would have bothered me.
Yeah.
To be laying people off.
Absolutely. So a big part of running a business is having empathy too, and putting yourself in the shoes of the people you hire and what they're going through.
For sure.
You had mentioned also the training you had was it Cleveland again that you had to go do? Would you mind talking a little bit about that and what you took away from that experience?
Yeah, that was very interesting. We had the Lincoln Electric in Cleveland, Ohio. When I worked for Central McGowan, I went down there and did training right on site at Lincoln Electric. They have their school right there, and did training and programming and installation of robots, and kind of worked all the way through. And then the nice part was they were always there for us. If as we were doing installs or programming, you'd always reach out to those gentlemen that did the training for us. It was really cool. It was all Fanuc robotics with Lincoln automation. So it was quite a place and taught us a lot.
So that was almost like your post-high school education right there. One could say right there. Yeah,
that was a part of it for sure.
Absolutely. Well, now I just want to transition more to Midsota, and that was what you mentioned as the first business you own. You were a co-owner of Midsota, correct?
Yes.
So, and your business partner was Joel Bauer, and I was just curious on how did you meet one another?
Joel and I, I suppose I met him the first time when I worked for Central McGowan, because I was selling product to Midsota, and at that time Joel was partnered in Midsota with 2 other guys, and that one of them, Todd Schultz, is who I bought out. He was the original owner there at Midsota, and then later Joel and I both bought out the third partner which was Brad Rodenwald. But the first time I really got to know Joel is probably shortly after I bought the company. Yeah, and actually became extremely good friends. Most people would think that's crazy, right? A lot of partnerships don't work. And most partnerships start with people knowing each other. But Joel and I truly didn't know each other know who we were each other, but never really knew each other or worked with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it worked out. It worked out extremely well. I couldn't have asked for a better partner to be in business with.
Absolutely. Yeah, he seems like a real stand-up guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for the people that might be listening to this, he's very involved in the community and just will do really anything for you. I remember when we had basketball when I was a senior in high school and practice was canceled because it was snowing and all of that.
Yeah.
And we just texted Joel, like, you mind if a couple of guys come over to your shed and shoot some hoops? He has a gym in his shed, and he's like, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Really goes out of you probably brought us waters too when we got there. I mean, he's just that type of guy, and that's awesome. I also know too, where I think back to Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak when they started Apple. They knew each other through, I think it was Atari. They worked together there, and they were friends. But then as they started working together, the business side of things kind of grew apart from one another. The work divided them. But it seems like for you and Joel, the work almost seemed to unite you guys in a partnership.
It did. We both had our own sort of values to the company. I ran certain divisions and he ran other ones, but the real cool part was there was never a time that we ever sat to make a business decision that we couldn't come to terms on. There was never a time, and never a time that where it ever even got heated where we wouldn't agree on something.
Mm-hmm.
We always worked through it, and we're always able to. Maybe there's times he probably wanted to not agree with me or whatever that I never knew about, but honestly, we figured it out always together, and it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And that's something that you don't hear often with business partners, it being fun.
Right.
You always think and I'm sure there are moments where it's stressful,
Right.
but that's a good thing when you're having fun at work too. And that certainly makes it a lot more rewarding and enjoyable.
For sure.
So when you guys bought Midsota, this was, according to St. Cloud Times, it was in 2008.
Yeah.
And the financial crisis of 2008 was going on when that happened.
Yeah.
What was that like when you first started your own company and you have a huge recession like that going on?
Yeah, so Joel was in there already in 2008. I bought in 2008. I bought Todd out in 2008 early, before anything really crashed. I was in there for a few months, and then everything went haywire. It taught us a lot. I mean, I think back, thank God I didn't know any better. I didn't really know what to expect. I just knew when that hit, it was hard times. I mean, we did everything in our power to keep everybody on staff. We went to 32 hours. I would have to ask my wife, but I went for months. Joel and I we didn't take a paycheck. We didn't pull any money out of that company for ourselves personally to live on. Our big priority was to keep our employees employed and pay their insurances, and we did it. It was tough, but we made it through it. And what that taught us, to be efficient, to be smart, wise with our money, just to keep that company running through those times. It was a small feat when we were done. You look back, and I still don't know how we made it through all that. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, and just not only that had been difficult for a veteran in owning businesses, let alone someone that just started owning their first ever one. So that's and then to not take a paycheck too. I mean, that just really shows the priority list you had when it came to the company and all that. You weren't thinking about yourself; you're thinking about the team and the employees that were on that team at Midsota. So that's admirable to say the least, right there.
Yeah.
Was there a certain point where you kind of realized, all right, we're out of these dark times, we're starting to get our footing in again? Do you know how long those dark times happen to last for because of the 2008 crisis?
Oh, I mean, that went well through into 2009. I would say late 2009, early 10, probably 2010, when it's like, okay, now we're moving, and we were growing, and growing quite rapidly, actually. I think back, I owned Midsota for 13 years, and I went from '08, 18 employees to 184 employees in 13 years. And I would say that really rocketed probably in 2010 when it really started to get good traction.
Absolutely. Was there some early accomplishments that allowed you guys to grow Midsota during that time period, or was there something that you would point to, or is like this is what caused us to start going on the uptick?
Oh yeah, probably the '08, the scare of that, knowing we only had a small makeup of models of trailers that we had, and a variety of other business that we were going after. When we got out of that, I made it a priority to develop new models of trailers. Traveled a bunch to find dealers. Joel and I both did. Our poor wives, they held things together for us, but we traveled. We set up dealer network, a huge dealer network that skyrocketed us all over the country. Before that, we were really central, really the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa was the majority of where our stuff went. After that, we went nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big part of it. Just get out there, start marketing ourselves, get a lot of new models out there, and then also work on other kinds of work. We did a lot of work, started to do a lot of work in the energy industry and small components and other stuff for other industries.
Okay, so you almost like diversified the business in a sense, because when you said getting involved in the energy industry like that, because people only they buy a trailer maybe once every, I don't know, it depends what you do, but I know my dad, he's got the same trailer for damn near 20 years it seems like now. So if you're going to have to expand if you want to grow, because the market's there's not a high ceiling necessarily, it seems like, when it comes to that.
Right, you get that market saturation on certain things, and but that's the reason we designed other stuff, got into different industries, heavier in the landscape, heavier trailers, bigger trailers, more into the more commercial. Always were in the ag industry with some of the ag trailers. I also did a full line of skid loader attachments in the ag and commercial industry. It just really diversified the whole business.
Absolutely. Is there a certain process you had when it came to designing different models of trailers or products that you were looking to make with Midsota?
Process always, really relied on our team coming up with new ideas, and then start building prototypes, draw them, design them, test them, do all that stuff, and just keep bettering them. I always compared, and I'd tell my guys, I compared it to the automotive industry, right? We might have had the perfect trailer, we thought, for years, but we always changed it. I was promoting, we needed a change. And you'd change up that model, and then a lot of the guys would trade in their old ones or sell them to their buddy and come out and buy the new one.
Mm-hmm.
So I always said, you don't go buy the new Ford truck or new Chevy truck because it's a new model. It's got a new look, things like that. So kind of based it on that too, just trying to come up with new ideas.
Yeah, and just don't become complacent, really, too.
100%.
That's a big thing. So you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, just your philosophy with business deals, but was there a certain thing that you learned over the years where it's like, this seems to work better compared to a different method, and how was that like when it came to conducting business deals, especially when you know the pressure that had been on you guys in making the right business deals for the number of not only employees but the families that relied upon these business deals?
Yeah, as far as, I don't know, there was a lot of pressure in business doing this, but making the right deals, making the right moves at the right time, and a lot of it, a lot of business, it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of luck, and there's, I don't know, surround yourself with good people, and we seem to work through all that stuff together. I don't know. I didn't exactly know how to answer all that.
You just kind of gotta take it as it comes, sort of.
You kind of do a little bit, yes.
Absolutely. Was there ever a time where you noticed the business was trying to kind of take advantage of you guys, or was there certain moments where you're like, oh, this guy's trying to short us out on something like that? And if that did happen, how'd you go about a situation like that?
Other businesses, you mean, or
Maybe,
people
yeah,
we
just
dealt with?
yeah, maybe just any time where you felt like that this person was trying to take more advantage of themselves than maybe, or it wasn't an equal deal. I don't know necessarily how to word it, but just where you felt this guy was trying to take advantage of you, or you or the company.
Yeah, you would have that once in a while. I mean, I remember a business deal we had with a guy out of way down south, always wanting us to make different things, and he had all these crazy ideas, and a lot of times I would dig into that, and I would look into it, and there were times we'd have customers that would get us down a bad path, and the one particular one that sticks out to me, he had all these ideas and promoted like crazy, and things would go wrong. He would just throw his hands up in the air and put it on our shoulders, and many times Joel and I would take that, and we would make sure it was right. I remember one time I sent our sales guys, multiple different sales guys all over the country. We had a product that we made specifically for that gentleman. It was his product, and he wouldn't stand behind it. I mean, it was his designs and everything, and he wouldn't stand behind them, but our name was on the side of that product. We actually I can't even remember, it was probably 8, 10, 12 units. And I had sales guys go as far as Florida to pick up a unit and give the customer, the end customer, not even we sold it to the guy, and then he remarketed it. But we went to that end customer, and we gave them their money back and took that unit back home.
Right.
And it was that vendor wouldn't stand behind what he was doing, but we did. We always stood behind our name, and it cost us a lot of money to do that, but we didn't want to have our name tarnished by a bad customer.
Absolutely, yeah. And that makes a big difference when you got that Midsota logo on the side of that sure. Product when you're out there. I mean, there's a lot of things that you want people to think of when you see that, but that certainly probably showed a lot of character of not only the business but the people running the business too. When that customer that got the bad end of the deal, but they saw that you guys were going out there and doing your best. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you also talked about this too. The difficulties in firing someone, but is there ever a certain thing or certain characteristics where you determine it's the time for someone that needs to be let go?
Oh, yeah. When you're talking employees, employment, there's always, and it's not always the right fit for everybody. And I always use the term to all my employees. I still use it today, the right seat on the bus. And there's many times that I would tell people they're not on the right seat on the bus. And I've taken people and moved them in positions. I remember a shop foreman that was the shop foreman at Midsota. And I told him when he was shop foreman that he sucked as a shop foreman. And he was the smartest guy in the company, by far. And put him to a few classes, and even did a lot of self-taught him engineering, and he today is the head engineer there today. But that's 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
I told him he needed to be in the right seat on the bus. He was just not in the right spot. There's so many of those stories. And then there's people that just shouldn't be on the bus.
Yep.
It's not in the right spot. I know that was another one. Great older gentleman. He was a welder on the shop floor at Midsota when I bought. Great guy, really good guy. And I actually let him go. He was going to hurt him. I mean, how he worked on the shop floor, it was just awkward. It just didn't work for him. He went back to school, and I remember a couple years later stopping at our shop and thanking me to help him move in the right direction. He became an accountant, actually.
Oh, really? That's quite the change. Then.
Quite a change. And it was so obvious. I don't know. He was there and obviously making good money, but I think he got wrapped up into just the job, right? The 9 to 5 deal or like 6:30 to 5 deal.
Yeah, exactly.
To make his living. And I think he was comfortable, but it didn't work for him. So it's fun stories like that you see people that succeed. And then there's times that it's tough. I mean, there's many people I've had to let go. And I always say, I would always give them 2, 3, 4, or 5 chances to make it, give them warnings, talk to them about it. But they knew it was coming. Yeah. And I truly believe I never fired anybody that didn't know at the end of the day that it wasn't the right spot for them.
Yeah.
So
they kind of knew what they were getting into when that time finally came.
Yeah, when that time's there, as long as you work with them. I mean, you hear some horror stories out there where people didn't have a clue, but I don't believe that I ever let somebody go that didn't know that they were in the wrong or that it just wasn't the right spot.
Yeah, and you probably vetted that out too in the hiring process. When you took someone on, it's like, okay, maybe they don't seem like the right fit initially, but they have the potential to learn, and maybe sometimes they end up learning. Sometimes they end up not being able to learn. But yeah, it seems fair on your part too to give them 2, 3, or 4 or 5 chances, like you said. And it's that's probably a lot more chances than most business leaders would do. But again, very honest way on conducting a business.
Yeah.
So when you were leading Midsota, did you find yourself relying upon the leadership traits that you developed at Rotochop or being a shop foreman, or did you change with the times, like the design of the trailers and new leadership position called for new leadership style, or did you always just stick to these core philosophies that you maybe even developed on the farm?
Yeah, I mean, I always, honestly, in my businesses, I've always stuck to the core values of treating people well, working with them to bring them up, better them, anything like that. I mean, even I think back, and I'm kind of getting off the topic here a little bit. I think back on this, the amount of people I hired, and I didn't hire them because they had the degree or they had the experience. I hired them for who they were, the willingness to learn. I mean, I think back on the Midsota side, I could take probably 50, 60 different people that we trained up that didn't know how to weld.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd hire them, and they just wanted a job. They wanted a better job. They wanted to learn a career. They wanted something. So we would train them how to weld, and we'd bring them up or make them a machine operator, make them a programmer, make them a robot operator. So many times. I would hire people for character. I would tell my HR gals all the time, these young HR gals, when you're giving a shop tour, if that person can't keep up to you as you walk your short little legs and they can't keep up to you, don't hire them.
Yep.
If they can't have the ambition on their job interview, on a tour in our plant to keep up with you, don't hire them.
Yeah.
The other one was, I always told them, if you ever see their vehicle, and I didn't care if it was a rusted out, old beat up vehicle, but if you walk by and you see the front seat piled with McDonald's bags or something, they don't even have enough ambition to take the garbage out of their car, don't hire them.
Yeah.
So
small things that say a lot.
That does, yes.
Would you, when you look back on these Midsota days, was there a proudest moment that you would point to?
Oh, there's so many. Oh, there's so many there. Some of the proudest moments probably are with the employees, helping the employees, working through things with them. I don't know. I've got some really cool stories where some of my employees were. I hired a lot of Hispanic guys or Colombian young. There's one perfect Colombian young story, a little Colombian young man that worked for me. Just a great guy, and he remember the one day he told me his dad was going back to Colombia to see his family, and this guy hasn't been back there since he came here, but he didn't have enough money to go see his mom. His real mom was still in Colombia, and then to see his grandma and his uncles. And I remember having him come to my office, and I paid for his ticket there. And then he kept telling me his mom lived in a village, and she needed she would come to the big city, but he needed to pay her bus fare. And I remember buying her bus ticket, or giving him money to buy the bus ticket and his airfare to get there. So those are proud moments. I mean, those are things, being in business, you were able to make some of the money to be able to help those people. And I've got more of those type of stories. I loved helping people like that, and still do today.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the joy you see on their face has got to be better than any paycheck that one can receive or any award one can get. I mean, that's what it's all about right there.
For sure.
Now, you talk about Hispanic workers. I know my friends work in a lot of blue-collar jobs where Hispanic workers seem to be, at least in this area, a big part of the workforce. And you grew up in this work environment in central Minnesota. Was there a certain time period where you first noticed the increase in Hispanic workers in the area? Or could you point your finger to when they started, migrating north to come work?
Yeah, a lot of it was, a lot of the Genio turkey facilities, or the Golden Plump back then, Pilgrim's Pride facilities, where a lot of Hispanic workers were at, and then also the dairy farms. A lot of Hispanic workers on the dairy farms, and that's actually where I realized that I needed to hire a few of those guys. I'd help my family. My family is large dairy farmers, huge dairy farms. And usually every Saturday I'd go help my brother. My brother runs a big portion of a large dairy farm, and I'd go help him every Saturday because I don't know why, I just always stayed connected to the farm, and I still do today. But I would go help him move calves pretty much every Saturday. And I remember a particular Saturday morning, it was a snowstorm. But that week I had just a horrible week, just with employment and employees and stuff. And I remember helping my brother, and we pull in this yard to pick up these calves. And it's a snowstorm, and this Hispanic guy comes running to his truck and asking him what he needed and what he needed help with. And I remember we loaded that load of calves, and we were driving back out of the driveway, and I looked at my brother and said, I need to find a few of those type of guys.
Yeah.
And it was. And the cool part is, that guy, that day that helped us load those cattle, still works for me today, personally.
Really?
Years later, he showed up on my doorstep in Midsota, and the gals at the front, he couldn't speak any English. He'd show up, and the gals at the front counter said, there's some guy that keeps stopping, and he wants to talk to you. They knew Tim. He could say my name, and I think it was the third time he stopped. I was walking from the shop into my office, and he walked up to me, and he shook my hand, and he said, I work for you, is what he told me. And I interviewed him, and then we had people that could translate, so we had conversations and stuff, and I hired him. And, after I sold Midsota, he left, and he went and worked for another manufacturing company. But then when I bought my next company in Millwood, he showed up within a week or week and a half after I bought Millwood, and I hired him again, and he works for me today.
He works for you.
And his son also works for me today.
He's true to his word there.
Yeah, he is.
So, have you observed a common story among these Hispanic workers over the years? Do they come from poor socioeconomic background? Their families don't have a lot of money. Are they fleeing some sort of hardship in these countries that they come from? Here in America, we think we have a bad day, and a bad day to them could be the best day of their life. Yeah. So I just was curious if you've observed a common story among these Hispanic workers.
Yeah, they're. I always say, we think we have bad days. I would love to know a lot of these guys' story. I know some of their stories. A lot of it is money, right? They're looking to make a better living for them and their families. They're very tight-knit to family. So they're looking to make the money, but then also a better life. A few Colombian guys and a few guys from Honduras over the years that work for me. And just a few of the stories that I've heard from them is crazy. Yeah, you say it. we think we have a bad day.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one that he was in the military in Colombia, him and his brother, and he came home to his Colombian drug lord. His dad actually owned land and a farm, and he said the Colombian drug lord people were always trying to push him and get the farm. It was money. So, and he came home from military leave to find his dad shot dead in his yard.
Yeah.
And there was I can't even imagine. And this guy was the chipperest guy in the world. But he was happy. He was here. He knew he was safe. He had a job, probably sending money back to his family. But the big thing about all these guys, they always had a smile on their face. They were always happy to work, and they worked hard.
Yeah.
And the talent, the amount of talent that I have found, and it didn't matter. I mean, that one young Colombian young man that I talk about, he was still is today at that company, the number one. He's in charge of, I think I had 7 robots in there. He's in charge of everyone. That's his. We trained him up. He's got a neat backstory, but his parents came here, or his stepmom and his dad came here on an educational visa. And he lived in Colombia with his grandma for many, many years without even seeing his dad. Mm-hmm. And then once he got here, he finished high school here. And during high school, he started working for me. But he today, and for many years already, he's around the robots. He's in charge of the robot division there. So brilliant young people. And then many more. I mean, there's the welding. We could teach them how to weld. And I have Eliseo is the guy's name. He works for me today. Amazing. He couldn't weld. He didn't know how to weld when he started working for me. Today, I mean, he does such a great job. He runs his own jobs on our shop. That's probably one of the best things I like about business too, is watching these people grow and then being able to give them a raise. I mean, it's never, when you do a interview or a review with these people and you give them a raise, they thank you. They give you a hug. It's not, oh, can't you give me 50 cents more? Can't you give me $1 more? It's thank you, sir.
Yep.
And I've said it for years. It's like going back 15, 20 years in our age of work, not work ethic, but being genuine and being appreciative. Mm-hmm. They appreciate anything you do for them.
Absolutely.
Which is so amazing. I've so enjoyed it. I enjoy that part of it, and thinking of what is their day like. And a lot of them can't speak our language. Mm-hmm. But they figure it out. I mean, they know how to do things and how much harder they have to work every day than we do, but they still just keep doing it. So that whole Hispanic Colombian work ethic and what they can do is amazing. I can't talk enough of it. They've changed my world. I guarantee you that. Absolutely.
And for the better, it seems.
For sure.
And it seems that and there's the positive stereotype among these Hispanic workers is doesn't matter what time of the day, what time of year, whether it's a snowstorm, where that is probably so novel to them, and that was probably, I mean, you think it's cold for us, and they're used, and a cold day for them back home is probably 85 degrees with the breeze.
Right.
And oh my gosh, you put them through a polar vortex here in Minnesota, and they're still showing up to work probably 10 minutes early. Doesn't matter. I mean, that is just like you say, work ethic, unbelievable. And it's got to feel good for you too, as someone who's giving these. I'm assuming it's mostly men that you happen to hire over the years.
Yep, both. Many ladies too. In our wiring departments, or even just cleaning. Mm-hmm. Anything like that. HR. One young lady, I hired her. She became one of our HR gals, translating. Many people doing translation, things like that. So, a variety of people.
But it's gotta. You gotta feel just a sense of pride that you are literally giving them this, like, the American dream, because they probably come here with that notion of all the, you want to get the nice car, get the nice house and all that, and you get to provide that for them. And that's just got to be, like you said, when you look back on it, that's what it's all about right there.
Absolutely.
So is there any particular lessons you think Americans nowadays could learn from these Hispanic workers that you've worked with over the years?
Kindness. Honestly, the kindness and slowing down enough to stop and thank people.
Mm-hmm.
I know they taught me a lot. I know every day, and I have for, it's probably going on 20 years. Every day I walk the floor first thing in the morning, and I say good morning to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just that little bit of kindness goes a long way. And then it's amazing how it's good morning and big smile on your face and how are you doing today, and asking those questions. That's probably one of the biggest things they've taught me is just be thankful.
Yeah. So simple, but yet something that is absent in today's culture more than ever, especially for people my age too. It's just some, especially with like social media, you just you sit there scrolling on your phone. You don't really realize like what's passing you by, and you know how fortunate you are to not only have that phone, but then the freedom to be able to go on it, and probably your air-conditioned household, and not really think much about it. I mean, you lose perspective on a lot of things when you become comfortable in this life, and that's probably where that work ethic comes from, is because they know what was back home for them, and how fortunate they are to get this opportunity. So they just go the extra mile to take advantage of what they are given. So again, admirable is the word that comes to describe them, at least from an outsider looking in.
Yeah, for sure.
So transitioning now to your company you currently are owning, Millwood. What prompted you to transition from Midsota to Millwood?
Honestly, the sale of Midsota was nothing but opportunity. Many years of big corporations and investment groups trying to buy us out, and Joel and I both decided to take it to market, and we actually marketed our company and decided to sell it off. Hard decision to do, but probably knowing it was the right thing to the size that we have grown it, to sell it off and move forward, and honestly retire was the blessing it gave me and my family. Was enough to truly retire, but I was 46 years old, and I can't sit still. I do a lot of ag yet. I have a lot of, I have 220 some head of feeder cattle, and I got 500-600 acres of farmland, and rent a lot of that out. And that was my plan. I was gonna retire from Midsota and just go work, do my thing on the farm, and just kind of have it as a hobby. And I did that for 4 months, I think, somewhere around 4 months. And in those 4 months, I wasn't satisfied. From going 100 miles an hour to just slowing down, and my wife would tell you, I still was the first. Every morning I'd leave the house before she did. And she goes, and you were supposed to be retired. I couldn't shut it down. And as I was out at the farm doing those things, started realizing there's more, and I wanted to do more yet. And I decided to entertain buying Millwood Metalworks. The owner of Millwood, Jim, approached me on how I went about selling my business, and at that point I started thinking maybe I should just buy it from him. And in my background, did a lot of work in the energy industry when I was at Midsota. I just wanted to, so I bought that business from Jim, Millwood, and started figuring, build that up, grow that up a little more. I do have a couple sons that want to be in business, and that is probably another big factor of the driver for doing it. I always tell my kids they don't ever have to be part of it, but if they want to, they're more than welcome. And that's kind of where they've led. They want to be in business, and they've been in manufacturing with me and listening to me at every dinner table about business. And so I figured if I can get this thing built up a little bit and be able to hand it off to them. And, I always tell them by the time I'm 50, I want to just be there to annoy them and maybe help them out if they need it, but maybe more just to watch them grow and see where we can take this.
Absolutely. So. That's got to be something, too, to look forward to. And
for sure.
Would you find it making that decision to sell Midsota and leaving the employees and the business that you've brought up? That had to have been a difficult decision, I would assume. And was it a difficult decision for you to make, or did you think the time was right and you were ready to transition to something different?
The time was right, for sure. Where the business was at, the employee side was the hardest by far. Still is today. I think about a lot of the people there. Honestly, I go there a lot. I get a lot of phone calls yet from that company. I keep it very close to me. But it was the hardest to not go in and work with those same people every single day. You become friends. You truly become friends with so many of those people. But that also is things change, and now at Millwood I have the same thing. We have a great team of people, and I get to make new friends. And work besides these people that are just great people. I don't know. I just think it's kind of in your blood. Once you get going into this and you work in these companies and work with good people, and you surround yourself with good people. As you're hiring more people, you just try to surround yourself with extremely good people.
Yeah, and that certainly helps the business in the long run, too, when you hire the right people to make the hires and you know what you're looking for. It certainly helps. You kind of alluded to it earlier with the Millwood deals with the energy business. Is it wind turbines in particular that you guys primarily deal with? And what do you guys typically do for the energy business, or the wind turbine industry, I should say?
Yeah, we do actually quite a few things. Our number one thing is actually in the wind industry. We do all the big embed rings and the templates, and honestly about anything other component they need on a wind site, we pretty much can produce and make for those companies. But we also do a ton in solar. We do a lot of componentry. It's not making solar panels or anything like that, but it's all the mounting brackets and all the different components that go out to these jobs. And then the fun part is I work with quite a few large installation companies around the country that install this equipment, and they come with problems or needs that they may have on a job, and we work on designing new products for them, which then in turn becomes pretty nice product lines for us. This energy industry right now is obviously a huge focus in our country. And honestly, I'm extremely blessed to be in it. It's a great industry, wonderful companies to work with. We're fortunate. We are busy, extremely busy with these companies right now, but the variety of all the components we make, it's large wind assemblies, and then all the other small components.
Yeah, and not only big in our country, but more just the world in general. It's very dynamic right now and changing almost every year. It seems like you get new headlines on this technology or that technology, and I mean it's not going away anytime soon, and the opportunities certainly are going to grow as time goes on. Was there a certain point when you recognized the potential that this the wind turbine or just the energy industry possessed? Was there a certain time where you were looking at maybe, I don't know if it was in your transition period from Millwood or from Midsota, you're just like, maybe this could be something where you could grow a successful business or improve upon an already successful business? Yeah,
part of it was I was doing quite a bit of it already in the wind industry, wind and solar, with one of the assembly companies, large assemblers of it. And then after I sold, the corporate company that bought Midsota out for me didn't want to be doing that anymore. They wanted to build trailers. It was more of a distraction truly for them in their ultimate goals. And so I bought all my fixturing and all my designs, or our designs at that time, back out from what I just sold, and brought it to Millwood and married that into what Jim and had going on at Millwood, and just put all that together and started growing. So there is, I think we've owned it now just over 2 years and well over tripled that company already in 2 years. So massive growth, but massive opportunity also.
And it's all you can ask for as an owner of a business right there.
Yeah.
Is there any big misconceptions that people seem to have when it comes to the industry you currently work in, whether it be from really technical things or just overall, that you wish more people would be aware of when it comes to this industry that you're currently involved in?
There's always, you have people that are, you get the whole thing where people think coal and all this stuff, and it all has its fit, right? Our country is growing. We need more energy. We need to supply the country, and this is a way to do it. The wind, the solar, they all have their pluses and their minuses for sure. Just like coal or any other nuclear or anything like that. They all have pluses and they all have their minuses to it. It's all what it takes to make this world go around. There's good money in this. There's funding, the government funding side of it, but the need is there. We got to figure out something to be clean energy, and right now it's wind and solar. So, and that's where we'll focus. And who knows what's next? There's, like you said earlier, this technology is changing every day.
Yeah,
and it is truly, and we see it. We're part of many projects that are just refurbish. Might have been old wind towers, and people don't realize this wind has been around a long time. There's a lot of old windmills that are coming down that are getting replaced with larger windmills today. It's been around a long time, just wasn't noted so much, especially up here in the Midwest. We haven't realized is now people are seeing it, hearing it, seeing a lot of the solar fields, things like that. But other parts of the country, it's been prominent for many years.
Absolutely. And who knows, in 25 years we could be looking back on wind like people look at coal nowadays and be like, why were we using that when there's such a more efficient way to utilize energy or harness energy? It's we'll see it, this exponential growth, it almost seems like, when it comes to these energy companies, and we'll see if it's sustainable, or if once we find it, we'll stick to it. But it's going to be interesting to observe as the years turn to decades. So I'm excited to see. Now shifting more towards just overall leadership questions here. You talked about this intense work ethic that you possess. Would you say you developed this on the farm? Was it something that you were able to build upon as you got into the workforce, or is it just something you were born with?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, part of it's in my blood. I mean, I talk about my mom earlier. She's so driven, and everything's 100 miles an hour, right? And I've definitely got that blood, right? It's just, I like to be busy, and I like to better myself. I think about when I got married, my wife and I both, we were broke. We didn't have a penny to our name. And what that, you drive and you start making some money and making better ways and doing your thing, and that just drives me. I mean, I like the next thing, and just keep bettering yourself. And I don't know, that's what makes me jump out of bed in the morning and go to work and do what we need to do. And I don't know, that's how I work.
It seems once you get that taste of success, it's hard to get that taste out of your mouth.
That is true. There is, when you're, not that I'm super successful, but I've done okay on a few different avenues, and that success does drive you, and even more so to help other people. My wife and I are both that way. We just love to help people, and that we can today be in the financial situation where you can help people and help people make a better life. If that's workers, if that's somebody in the public, many things like that. I think of Christmas time and donations and different things we do for families that we do independently, and that makes us so proud. And being successful on a few things and allows you to do that with people, so it's fun.
Yeah, it feels good to spread the wealth,
Yep.
just to everyone in life. Is there anything you wish you would have done or known when you first entered the workforce because it could have benefited you later in your career?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Would perhaps knowing Spanish, working with these Hispanic workers, that could have been something? Or I don't know if with like technology work on computers as things transition.
Oh, for sure. I think about, I call my computer a tool. It's like a hammer to me, right? I need to have it to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
Am I good at it? No, not really. Do I need it to do my job? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I wish I had I think of that, my kids today, growing up on a computer, how they can just buzz through anything on it. I have to work hard at it. I really do. When I'm on a computer, I would tell you probably 6 hours a day, maybe a little more between the variety of everything I do. I wish I had that background. Spanish, speaking Spanish. And shame on me that I haven't learned Spanish yet today. But I did just get some really cool earbuds that I can wear one, and a Spanish young gentleman can wear the other one, and he can speak Spanish, and I can hear him perfectly in English in my earbud, and I speak English, and he hears Spanish in his earbud. I tell you what, I just did all the reviews for my company, and anybody Spanish speaking, I gave him an earbud, and we had a great conversation. It was technology at its finest.
Absolutely. And you thought you had a good relationship with them before.
Oh, I know.
You had those, and now when you can have sent like paragraphs back and forth to one another, that's really gonna grow the human connection within the shop.
But I watch my sons both can speak not great Spanish, but they can speak Spanish, and I watch them in the shop environment, and they'll be out there talking to the guys and just joking around with them. It's so cool. It's pretty cool. That is one thing I wish I had that.
Yeah.
Would really been nice.
Absolutely. But like you said, with technology now, hopefully you'll be able to start utilizing that. So, in your opinion, over the years, is there something that separates the exceptionally successful companies from the moderately successful companies? Like what would be those little traits that separates the good from the great?
Probably many things. In my eyes, is people listening to their people. I truly believe extremely successful companies step back and listen to their employees. I tell my employees all the time, I'll be on the shop floor or doing anything, and I will always ask them, you do this every day. What do you think? And they always have really good ideas. Not that it's always there. And I always tell everybody, tell me what you think, but you can't be mad if I don't use it. But 9 times out of 10, when they're doing that job every single day, they know what they're doing, or they have great ideas. So I think many good to great, I would say the great companies, step back and work with their employees, listen to ideas. We don't always have them. As the owner, I don't always have the best idea, but somebody in my organization does. And that's, I think, what makes companies great and successful.
Absolutely. And my final question I have here is, if you were to give one piece of advice to the young people about to enter the workforce,
Yep.
what would you tell them?
Work hard, be respectful, and just treat people well.
Mm.
Honestly, if you can work hard and treat people how you want to be treated. And I tell that to people all the time. I tell my kids that. I've told my kids that forever. You treat people how you want to be treated. You'll be successful. Treat people well and work hard and just do your best every day.
Mm-hmm.
You'll succeed.
Simple stuff, but
Very simple.
But it gives results that you want to see right there.
Absolutely.
Well, Tim, I can't say thanks enough, but thank you for giving me the time. I really do appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Mason.
Thank you for listening to Youthful Perspectives. I hope you're able to come away with some valuable knowledge that can be implemented into your everyday life. Of the many topics we discuss, my biggest takeaways center around simple principles that can generate extraordinary results. For example, Tim and Joel's willingness to sacrifice their paychecks during the 2008 financial crisis demonstrated their commitment to, quote, truly working as a team, end quote, and demonstrated their determination to support their employees. The idea of not becoming complacent and always thinking of ways to improve a product or enhance a sales tactic because your competitors are doing the same thing. If you want to stay ahead, you got to think ahead. And finally, as Tim stated throughout our conversation, his proudest moment didn't arise from receiving a prestigious award or securing a lucrative business deal. Instead, it centered around his employees and the different ways he was able to help them and their families. Ultimately, these three examples demonstrate a basic rule that has existed for ages and should be something we all try to achieve each and every day. Treat people the way you want to be treated. This is Mason Beerbaum, signing off.